So, um, sometimes people talk to me, what's the difference between anxiety and sadness or depression? And there's a term out there for having like the if depression's like the sadness version of a mental illness. Anxiety has its own mental illness form called GAD, general anxiety disorder. Now, general anxiety disorder is not the best name because, yes, the acronym GAD works out, but GAD also is a Hebrew name, and GAD can also mean aimlessly and carelessly walking or having fun, like to gad about, which is not a common usage, but quite the irony. Well, the way I help try to distinguish between anxiety and depression, and a lot of people have both and they can switch between the both. It's not as clear cut, but generally anxiety is much more of an active thing in my mind, where you're panicking in the moment, your heart is racing, you're thinking about a billion scenarios that can go wrong. You might be thinking so fast that you actually can't think because you're just blinded by a million directions and you can't sleep and stuff. Well, depression, it's much more of an inactive thing. You've given up. Your mind is feeling sluggish, you feel tired. Well, anxiety, you feel tired, but you also have your heart racing. You don't feel motivated to anything. You only feel hopeless. And you're just sad and sitting in a corner, not screaming. Now, yes, there's a huge amount of overlap, and really, people have both symptoms oftentimes when depressed or anxious. So I don't want you to think it's a clear one is active and one is inactive, but this helps me settle it out. But there is a useful with this with actual treatment. With depression, it can be important to get someone out of the bed or moving much more than always calm down. And sometimes you need to stimulate them more instead of just sitting in the bed alone. Or someone that's having an anxiety attack, they might need the exact opposite. They might need to sit alone in the bed to calm down. So it can lead to very, very different treatments. In fact, the exact opposite treatment. There's also some debate in whether general anxiety disorder is real. I say it's real. Some people say it's only a symptom of certain people with other neurological neurodivergencies and other neurological things. I say it is not, because I say it's so much more common in those communities because of the mistreatment and stuff. They often get confused with those neurological disorders, but I can see it outside the communities because I personally know I've seen people without other neurodivergencies that have that. Also, whether you have general anxiety disorder or depression, you can change what medication works best for you. This does not mean one medication. This doesn't always work out to tell you exactly what medication you should be on, and you should always go to a doctor to really get the prescription and talk this out. So I won't recommend or tell you what medications works better for one thing or another thing. That is for you to talk to your doctor if you have a concern. Other things that sometimes get confused is cPTSD versus PTSD. And again, I am kind of overgeneralizing. So post-traumatic and also PTS. So PTS is post-traumatic stress. That's when something really bad has happened to you in your life, and you have stress left over from the event way after the event. Not always way after the event, but the event is gone. Post-traumatic stress, PTS, it's a symptom of PTSD or PTSD. It can also just be a one-off time thing event, or a few times event. For it to be PTSD or cPTSD, it has to be a reoccurring thing that's really affecting you. For PTSD, okay, cPTSD, I want to say, is also not recognized in the DSM, and I think that's because I will get to it, is what I refer to as a disorder of the minorities in some ways with the mental health. But that's not a very good wording, but it's a mental health condition find much more minorities, and that's why I don't think they pay attention to it. But PTSD is like, versus PTSD, if I was to exaggerate the difference, and I'm really exaggerating the difference, it's a one-time bad event happened to you, like that's probably unlikely to happen to you again. Like you were in a ridiculously bad car crash. You were flying in a plane and there's a plane crash and you survived. These stuff is probably never going to happen to you again. Well, cPTSD is your whole life had many miserable events. There's trauma after trauma that really occurred. It wasn't just one big event. And it's trauma that might still occur a lot more. Like you might be systematic abuse by the system. It might be that you face a lot of racism or sexism or anti-LGBTQ+, ableism or something, and medical trauma, and just has happened to you your whole life. Family abuse, and even if you're outside of family, you're still more likely to suffer family abuse because you're more likely to get into an abusive relationship or don't have the tools to protect yourself. So cPTSD is trauma that's happened over much more long time that's still more likely to happen to you over and over again. PTSD, it's easy to separate out. It doesn't, it's panic attacks and stuff like that, but it doesn't manifest in as complex way as cPTSD, where you have had it for so long that you have all these mechanisms and personality and defense stuff and all these other things just surrounding it, and you've really based your livelihood on it. But where it's really important to kind of recognize the difference between PTSD and cPTSD is how we can treat it. When we look at a one-off event that's unlikely to ever occur to you again, we can try to get you to expose you maybe to it. With exposure therapy, you have to be very, very careful with it, and it has to be totally the consent of the person. It can't be forced, and there's a ton of things that go into it. We can maybe expose you to cause or something so you get used to it. We can talk about how it's illogical to some extent that you're so afraid of this and that, and how unlikely it is. And we can look from that from a therapy standpoint. cPTSD, we really can't, because it can happen to you again and it becomes very gaslighting fast. And you actually want to be on the cautious side of when it's gaslighting or not, because if you're not the person, you might not be able to judge how much bigotry or stuff they faced. And a lot of minorities and neurodivergents and disabled, I hear it all the time, that how they were gaslighted by therapists or mental health professionals. So people overstep the boundaries a lot and gaslight people. Yeah. But beyond all this gaslighting and stuff that can occur with all this stuff, is that there is a way, though, to treat cPTSD that might not be as relevant for PTSD. And my recommendation is, if you have cPTSD or suspect you have cPTSD, you need to find a safe place in the community that you don't have to be always on guard and up, or that appreciates you for who you are, not one that just loves you for your fake self, loves you for your true self. And find that community can be really, really hard. It might also be virtual online. And then you can start coming out of your cell and going out of it. Another thing is to take a stance against it. If you were abused in some way, help other people overcome that abuse, help fight that abuse so other people don't suffer from it. If you're facing any type of bigotry, same deal. The thing about this, when I'm saying fight the system, is I know it can be mentally tiresome, and it can also worsen your mental health. So you have to figure out how to do it, but not too much. Enough that you feel like you're taking a stand and fighting back against the thing that hurt you. So you feel proud and like you're accomplishing something and empowered, but not enough that you feel powerless. And that can be a very hard balance. One thing is, I say that you should do some of your advocacy or fighting in a community that does appreciate you again. Find that appreciative community is really hard. And also try to look for a community similar to you that might understand what you're going through more and won't gaslight you, or that you can connect without have to go into long backstories explaining everything, and that connection's easier without all those things. That's why it's important sometimes to find therapists of a similar background to you. And we need more therapists of color. We need more therapists that are not straight men, straight cis men. We need more therapists that are neurodivergent. We need more therapists from poor backgrounds. We need therapists of all ages. We don't need just all therapists from the same thing. Another thing, things that can help both is learning anti-anxiety strategies, but anti-anxiety strategies can be totally different people. Or may calm one person down, may make another person anxious. Living by routines can help calm people down. Figuring out what triggers are, and sometimes avoiding them can help both times. With PTSD, sometimes exposure therapy works, but exposure therapy doesn't always work. Exposure therapy never works for, or almost never works for sensory issues, and can just cause a lot of trauma and make everything worse. And if it's gaslighting, it can just cause all more cPTSD. I think so. I'm being very cautious about exposure therapy. Well, thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. It really helps 10 out. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers in a year and 4,000 watch hours. The reason for this is I really want to make this more professional and better, and I really want to help a lot of people, and that's when I can start reinvesting stuff on this and focusing more on this. Well, thank you very much, and if you have any ideas for future videos, comments, or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below. Again, thank you. Goodbye.